For years, we've all heard the same story. The pyramids were built by slaves, like it's some kind of unquestionable fact. But there's a shocking truth buried deep in the sands of Giza, proof that we've all been fed one of the biggest lies in history, a lie repeated in books, in movies, even by some historians. But when you dig beneath the surface, the truth flips the whole story upside down. Picture this: workers who built the pyramids living in their own homes, buried in decorated tombs, eating fresh food every day, and getting advanced medical care. They weren't suffering in chains, they were proud of their work, building not just for the pharaohs, but tombs for themselves, right next to the greatest monument in history. What we're about to share isn't just information, it's a rewrite of history, exposing a myth that's lasted for thousands of years. So, who really built the pyramids, and who invented the slave story? But before we uncover what they've been hiding for thousands of years, make sure you're part of the journey. Subscribe now and support the channel, because what you'll hear here you won't find in their books or on their screens. The pyramids, the only surviving wonder of the ancient world. For thousands of years, they've puzzled scientists, and everyone keeps asking, who built them? How did they manage to lift those massive stones without cranes or modern technology? Over time, strange theories have emerged. Some claim the Jews built them, others tied them to the lost continent of Atlantis, and some even suggested the builders came from outer space. It's as if the whole world has been trying to take the credit away from the Egyptians and hand it to someone else. But, to the misfortune of all those claimants, recent archaeological discoveries at Giza have turned the tables, proving beyond any doubt that the pyramid builders were true Egyptians. They were the engineers, the workers, the real masterminds behind this architectural miracle. Before these discoveries, even scholars were puzzled. Herodotus, the Greek historian, when he visited Egypt in the 5th century BC, claimed that 100,000 laborers worked for 20 years to build the Great Pyramid of Khufu. But modern studies corrected that number, only about 20,000 workers. Now imagine 20,000 people working on one project through the reigns of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. That's at least 67 years. It would mean an entire city existed next to the pyramids, with houses, food storage, temples, and even a cemetery for the workers. Could all of that really just vanish without leaving a trace? And what really sealed the picture were the inscriptions found right around the pyramid site itself. These carvings describe the builders as part of an organized force, working year-round at the construction site, with farmers from nearby villages taking turns to join them during the Nile's flood season. Meaning, this wasn't just a construction site, it was a national project. Even more surprising, each crew had its own unique name, like Friends of Khufu or the Companions of Menkaure, and these names were carved into the very stones they hauled, almost like a signature of pride on the greatest monument in history. But here's the question: if all this is true, where were the workers' homes, their workshops, the traces of their daily lives? The truth is, they'd been there the whole time, but nobody had been looking for them. For decades, archaeologists focused almost entirely on the pyramids themselves, ignoring the workers' towns and cemeteries as if they weren't part of the story. That delay gave rise to all the wild theories about who built the pyramids. But everything changed after two major discoveries that flipped the script: the workers' village and their dedicated cemetery. Excavations revealed workshops and housing for 3 generations of builders, the very people who witnessed the construction of Khufu's, Khafre's, and Menkaure's pyramids. In 2 areas known as the Workers' Barracks, archaeologist Petrie uncovered 78 massive halls, each about 10 feet wide and nearly 94 feet long, with open space in front of them. Among the finds were statue fragments and tools, leading Petrie to conclude that around 4,000 core workers lived here year-round. In other words, a fully functioning city once stood in the shadow of the pyramids. And this is just the beginning of the story. In 1989, Dr. Zahi Hawass and Nicholas Conard went back to restudy the very site Petrie had once called the Workers' Barracks west of Khafre's pyramid. And what they found flipped the script. Instead of sleeping quarters, they uncovered something entirely different. Bits of copper and aluminum, small flints, piles of broken pottery, animal bones, charcoal, barley, oats, lentils, the kind of stuff you'd expect in the middle of a busy workyard or neighborhood. They also turned up small royal statues and limestone figurines of people, pointing to a statue-making workshop, not a dorm. Even the layout matched wooden models and tomb scenes from the Old Kingdom, showing workers' shops. By 1991, the finds got even better. Old walls, thousands of smashed pottery jars, and stone foundations, forming 12 side rooms attached to a big mud brick building. The highlight? 2 massive clay vats in parallel rooms, ancient ovens just like the ones carved into Old Kingdom tomb walls. Each one was about 17 feet long, 8 feet wide, and filled with broken bread molds. These ovens connected to a huge mud brick structure where the floors held low black silt tables and stands for them. Then in '95, they found a row of long parallel basins with fish bones and animal skull fragments scattered across the floor. This wasn't just where workers lived. It was a full-on industrial food hub, cranking out meals for thousands every day. The Pyramid Project wasn't some myth. It was a living city that ran around the clock. All those discoveries in the bread ovens and food workshops weren't just side notes. They were the prelude to an even bigger reveal: the homes and tombs of the pyramid builders themselves. It all started by accident. During the installation of a sewage system in the village of Nazlet El Saman, just about 800 feet from the Sphinx, workers broke into an archaeological layer dating straight back to the era of the pyramid builders. A continuous stretch of mud brick buildings lying only about 165 feet from the suspected site of Khufu's Valley Temple, running south for nearly a full mile. Here, they uncovered thousands of broken pottery shards, intact cooking pots, beer jars, sieves for grain and flour, and even large chunks of charcoal, hinting that trees once grew here. Then in 1992, archaeologist Mark Lehner's team recorded basalt and limestone walls inside the trench, some running east to west, intersecting others north to south, possibly the remnants of a massive rectangular enclosure wall. In 1994, just 17 feet from the proposed Valley Temple of Khufu, they found a colossal limestone-based wall, over 13 feet thick, mostly straight, as if it were part of a major fortification or central structure that was never fully completed. And right there, among the ruins, the bones of cattle, sheep, and pigs, all showing clear butchery marks. To Dr. Zahi Hawass and his colleagues, the evidence was undeniable. This was the very spot where the homes and camps of those ancient Egyptians stood, the men and women who carried the dream of the pyramids on their shoulders. After uncovering the details of their daily lives, it was time to reveal one of the most emotional discoveries of all: the tombs of the pyramid builders. For years, finding this burial ground had been a dream for Egyptologists, especially Egyptian ones, determined to silence claims that the pyramids were built by anyone other than the ancient Egyptians themselves. The story begins between 1988 and 1989, when archaeologists uncovered the first worker's tomb above the embalming workshop of King Menkaure. Built of mud brick, the modest tomb had 2 chambers, each with its own shaft. Inside one shaft lay a human skeleton in the fetal position facing east, head to the north. At first, the lack of funerary goods made some believe it was a storage room later reused for burial, but later evidence proved it had always been intended as the final resting place of a pyramid builder. Then, in 1990, came the breakthrough discovery: an entire cemetery of pyramid builders west of the village of Nazlet El Saman, near the Great Sphinx. It started with what looked like an ordinary mud brick wall, but it turned out to be the facade of a tomb, with a long shaft and 2 false doors, allowing the deceased to remain symbolically connected to the world of the living. Inside, simple inscriptions named the tomb's owner, Petar Shepses, and his wife. Behind the shaft were 3 vertical tombs for the family, plus a small courtyard of low limestone walls. Though far simpler than the noble mastabas near the pyramids, it was considered a large tomb compared to those around it. Surrounding it were smaller vertical burials ever known. But the story didn't end with the statue of Hebri Kaus. Right beside her, archaeologists uncovered 2 more statues that completed the picture of daily life in the builder's cemetery. The first was of a man named Kai Heb, likely her husband. The second was even more intimate and human, a woman kneeling on the ground, grinding grain on a heavy stone quern. A simple act, but filled with power. The ancient Egyptian sculptor masterfully carved the muscles of her shoulders and arms, capturing the strength required to work the massive stone grinder. The quern itself was painted red to represent granite, with a small patch of white in the middle, showing the flour collected into a bag between her knees. Even the details, the wig tied with a white cloth, King Jed Kara from the 5th dynasty. This shows that parts of the cemetery were built after the era of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. But perhaps the greatest find here was a massive limestone mastaba tomb, perfectly matching the style of the 4th dynasty. Inside were 6 burial shafts, 2 false doors, and a rock-cut chamber filled with pottery vessels. On the western wall, a niche sealed with mud brick revealed only the head of a statue. When the bricks were carefully removed, it was like opening a witch's. They were his entire life story, carved into stone. The central statue shows him at the time of his death with calm features and a serene gaze, while the 2 standing figures on either side captured his youth, and the seated figure on the right portrayed him in old age. It seems Inti Shado wished to imitate what he saw every day in the royal temples near the pyramids, where, from the reign of Khafre until the end of the Old Kingdom, kings would place collections of statues depicting themselves at different ages. He was no king, but a high-ranking official in royal service, and yet he decided he too deserved a form of immortality like theirs. Nearby, another remarkable find emerged, the tomb of Nefertet and his wife, Neferhetep. Simple in construction, yet rich with hieroglyphic inscriptions and detailed carvings. 3 limestone false doors, pillars engraved with the names of the deceased, his 2 wives, and their 18 children. On the doors, vivid scenes from daily life, grinding grain, brewing beer, baking bread, hinting that Nefertet may have overseen the bakeries supplying the pyramid builders' food workshops. But perhaps the most intriguing tomb was that of Piteti and his wife Nessi Sokar, priestess of Hathor. Its entrance was guarded by a fierce curse carved in stone to protect it. Hear this, all of you. The priests of Hathor will be twice angered at anyone who enters this tomb or dares to disturb it, and the goddess herself will confront them. And if anyone dares harm me, the crocodile, the hippopotamus, and the lion will devour them. Words carved thousands of years ago, yet their warning still carries a chilling weight today. And with every step we take deeper into this ancient necropolis, the picture becomes clearer. The names and titles carved into the stone, the distinctive pottery styles, all point to one era, the reign of Khufu, the second king of Egypt's 4th dynasty. This sacred ground remained in use until the end of the 5th dynasty, over a century of history buried here. But here's the staggering fact. What has been uncovered so far represents only 20% of the total cemetery, meaning the sands of Giza still guard secrets yet to be revealed. And within these tombs lies evidence that shatters one of the oldest lies in human history. Skeletal remains show signs of advanced medical care, healed fractures, successful amputations of hands and feet. These are not the marks of slaves broken by forced labor, but of workers who were valued and cared for. Here, the myth of the slaves collapses. The builders of the pyramids were not captives, but proud Egyptian farmers, called upon in specific seasons, working under the guidance of the finest craftsmen and architects of their time. And they didn't just build the tombs of kings, they built tombs for themselves, to stand beside the greatest monument in history, a testament to their sweat, skill, and pride. For decades, the world has been fed the same lie, that slaves built the pyramids. Books, movies, even official statements, all designed to cement a false legend, a story meant to bury the truth and strip the greatest achievement in history from its rightful creators. But now, the evidence buried deep in the necropolis speaks loud and clear. The pyramid builders were free men, Egyptians, proud of their work, and laid to rest beside the very wonders they built with their own hands. This isn't just a story, it's the unmasking of one of the greatest historical deceptions ever told. And now the question is, how many more lies are still hidden from us? If you made it this far, then I'm pretty sure you enjoyed the content. Support the channel by subscribing, and don't forget to hit the like button. Your engagement is what helps the video reach more people. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.